Earlier, we saw some of Jacob's incredible forest cabins, but today we've traveled to another property in Olympia where we're about to see where it all began and visit Jacob's very first cabin in the woods. Yo, Jacob.
What's up, man?
Good to see you again,
man. Good to see you, dude.
Dude, it was a bit of an ordeal getting out here, eh?
Oh yeah, you mean from where we parked?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if sometimes it gets longer and longer, but it must be 100, 200 yards out here, crossing a river, using the hand trolley. Yeah, but it's cool, right?
I mean, it's amazing. This is exactly the kind of remote location where you would want to build a cabin like this.
It was a blessing and a curse. I mean, I think that it's really beautiful to be out here, away from roads and away from everything, but very difficult to kind of forge the path and to bring all the materials. That was also really difficult.
So you carried everything out here by hand?
On these shoulders and these, yeah, I did. It was hard. The river is crazy because it'll go from 4 feet wide to 30 feet wide. So there were times when it was not crossable, but mainly I'd cross over a fallen tree. And post me living here, someone put in a trolley to make it easier, but I still use the tree because it's still there.
This place is actually really special because this was your very first cabin, wasn't it?
This is where I started really working it out, and I mean, I just went for it. I jumped into it. It was made with 100% recycled materials, and it cost me about $800.
And getting all of the materials together, if this place only cost you $800 to build, you must have been really resourceful with your sourcing.
That's one way to say it. The other would be like I was like a crow, you know, I was just picking at the scraps that were outside job sites or on my job sites that I was working on, or friends' job sites, or some salvage stuff that I did actually have to buy. Like the metal roof was salvaged, but I sourced it through Craigslist, and I was a scavenger. That's what looking for carrion, so I was just like getting everything free that I could.
As your very first build project though, this still doesn't actually look like a super simple project. There's some quite complex geometry and everything that's going into this house as well, isn't there?
It wasn't easy. I didn't pick just an easy cabin. I wanted it to look different than things that I had seen, and I also had this vision in my mind that I wanted to see it realized, you know. So in my mind I wanted to see a shed roof that went from a high point to a low point instead of a high wall to a low wall. So it was basically like a normal shed roof that's just a single pitch, but then the roof rotated and the whole actual building kind of rotated, so it was more angular looking, I suppose. And I also wanted it to be really, really tall. Like I wanted to have 12-foot ceilings on the ground, and then I also wanted to be able to do a sun salutation up in a high point, so that shot it up to something like 18 feet. And it was only a 10 by 10 because in my mind I thought that it had to be under 100 square feet when the rule was actually 200 square feet. So I made it really tall and skinny, and that was complicated for sure.
And that was very much what went on to define something that's kind of become your style, hasn't it? These really unique and intricate shapes that are actually going into the cabins that you build now.
Yeah, I guess like everything I do is based on shape and based on like a theme almost, like those little wings that kind of shoot out. I wanted it to have this sort of like witch's cap look. And then I started thinking, well, that's not really a witch's cap, it looks more like a manta ray. That's maybe where I feel like it's more of a sculpture. And I want it to be different, you know.
Cool, man. Well,
yeah,
let's go inside and have a look.
Come in.
Hey, wow. It's definitely very sparse right now,
yeah.
But I think part of the charm of this kind of sort of rustic cabin is it doesn't need a lot of things to fill it and make it look right.
I was a college student and I was trying to live this low impact lifestyle, so this was way more my kind of a cabin. And when I did live in here, it was definitely closer to this, where it's like candles. I didn't have a couch. I had pillows. Like the upstairs right now looks exactly like it did when I lived here, pretty much. And what I loved about living out here was that there was just less of everything. And when I started this is kind of when I started out on my own. I was a really young carpenter. I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't have tools. But I like it all bare bones, and I don't know, it's cool. Maybe it's just nostalgia. That's why I like it so much, just being back in it.
We kind of talked about this a little bit with your last cabins that we visited, but when you are building a cabin like this in the woods, maintaining that intimate connection with nature is so vital, and keeping all of the area a bit more sparse, and then having features like this elongated window just really help bring the outside into this space.
I mean, yeah, that's the idea. The windows, like, I want you to feel like you're inside one of the trees, and that these are just the windows from the inside of the tree that you're in to all the other trees that are around you. If you look at those trees, there's these lines in there, and you have the tree kind of being separated by these lines, but it continues up. And then if you go upstairs, you see that same tree, you're up in the top of the tree. And upstairs has some real big windows and a real big skylight, and the same sort of thing. Like, I want you to feel like you're treehouse style, like you're in the trees.
All right, well, should we have a look upstairs?
No doubt.
Man, this is just so cozy. It's a little bit like camping. That's very much how it feels.
Cool. And yeah, that's what it is. It's like a big wooden tent that you get to leave set up all the time in the middle of the woods. And that's one thing I love about building, is that you start in a place that humans haven't touched at all. It's just nature, trees, mud. And you start sinking that shovel and making a place to protect yourself from the elements. And it's not you against nature, but we need shelter, and people have been doing it for millennia.
I think especially in today's modern society, it's really easy to fall into that trap of thinking that we need so many of the things that we're just used to having.
Right.
But for 3 years, you successfully lived out here with no running water, with no power, and yet still managed to be a functioning member of society.
Right.
What are your thoughts around that, and what advice would you have for people who are looking at taking the plunge into a simple cabin project but are maybe afraid of doing that if it means giving up some of the modern conveniences?
One thing is that you don't have to think like, oh my God, I'm not gonna shower for 3 years. It's kind of just looking elsewhere. There's also a creek, so in the summer I swim a lot, and you know, it was just like there are other ways of getting clean. And then I would say that there is, to some extent, yeah, it's roughing it, but if you are willing to believe that the value is not just tangible, you know, the value in being in a space like this and living in a space like this and living a more simplified lifestyle, the value is not tangible. If you don't believe that, then you might be like, yeah, it's not worth it, you know, because it's more work. You definitely, like I said, hauling everything back here, that was a pain, you know, that was really hard. But right now, especially, there's this insane joy that I feel from knowing that I did that.
I really love the adventure of this place. I love the story of the adventure that you had actually creating this. I'm a little bit envious of the fact that you lived here, because I would have loved a place like this when I was in university. But I love as well the adventure that it still represents today, like climbing up this ladder and coming up into this loft and being amongst these trees. It just makes me feel like a kid again. Thank you so much for sharing the space with me.
Thanks for coming, man. I appreciate it.
Jacob is a cabin builder who is now constructing these wonderful, ornate, sacred geometric works of art in the forest. But coming here is so special because this is where it all began. This is where he got the courage to actually learn his craft and just experiment. And in the process, he built himself a wonderful home that served him for 3 years. And in that, I am finding a lot of inspiration.